good morning. It's another one of our first fives. Today, we're continuing what we've been talking about this whole week about service. What is it like to serve other people? The truth is, many of us really do like to be served, but Jesus invites us to a way of life in which we serve others. Often I'll hear things like this. We don't need to help people, we just need to give them the gospel, like good news. And what they mean by that is they just want people to make one decision where they decide, I'm going to follow Jesus with my life, I'm going to pray a prayer, and I'm going to check them off the lists. But it's interesting. When I read the Gospels, when I read the actual good news of Jesus, I don't see that as his invitation. What I see is Jesus continually invites us to a particular way of life. In fact, I think it's interesting that this text from Matthew chapter 25 is one that I think all of us should think through a little bit in these days. Here's what Jesus says. These are his words. From Matthew 25, verse 31. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He'll put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? Have you ever wondered what it looks like to serve Jesus? Have you ever wondered what it looks like to live your life in such a way that you're seeking after him? Have you ever found yourself wrestling with that question? In fact, what we begin to find is Jesus invites us to a particular way of life. And if we live it so well, we'll begin to ask those questions. Jesus, when did I see you? I don't remember running into you. But what he goes on to say is basically this, that whatever you do for anyone else, you do for him. Right? What we find all throughout the scriptures is God is the God of the poor and the oppressed and the marginalized. And where we find Jesus is in the margins. We find him serving people in need. And here's where I would even push us some in these days to think about what that looks like. Are we a voice for the voiceless? Do we recognize a need to offer love and support? And do we recognize a need to be silent when people tell us of their oppression? Because sometimes what we find is we don't even know we do these things to Jesus. And it goes on to say, many go, well, Lord, I did all this stuff in your name. And he goes, I never knew you. You did a lot of stuff for you. And so what we begin to find is there's this invitation to live a particular way of life. It's the way of love, the way of leadership, the way of Jesus. And it happens when we take the lowest place, when we serve others, when we listen to people's stories. And in these days, where our people of color, our brothers and sisters of different colors than many of us, when they speak, why don't we listen first before we respond? Why don't we try to empathize and hear their story and live as a people of compassion? And here's the other part of this. I've heard people say my whole life, don't just give people the gospel. Just give them the gospel. That's all they need. No, what Jesus is saying is pretty clear. Give them the gospel. Give them the good news that God has prepared a place for them. But part of how we do that is how we live. And so may you and I serve others with our lives. And what I believe to the core of my being is if we will serve others, we won't go wrong. You can't go wrong when you're investing in the lives of others. Even when they take advantage of us, you can't go wrong when you serve people. One of the ways we serve is by listening. We obviously serve by doing. Jesus is clear. He talks about people in the margins and how we're called to help them. May your day be filled with God's grace and hope and love. And may you and I be people who embrace this call, this practice, this discipline of service. And may we serve others because God came and served us. And he still does by offering his son up as a way for us to recognize the depth of his love. May we be people who reflect that same love. May your day be filled with grace, hope, and love. We'll see you tomorrow.